Kung Fu Master was released for the arcade in 1984 and is one of the earliest beat-em-ups ever made, arguably the very first. It was ported to several consoles, and the first one I ever played was the NES version, which was one of the console's 18 launch titles when it was released in North America in 1985. You play as KG Thomas. I guess he's half Japanese, half American, because that's a clash of name origins if I ever heard one. The simple plot is that Thomas's girlfriend Sylvia has been kidnapped by Mr. X, and he has to rescue her. Why Mr. X is holding Sylvia captive is beyond me, but shit like that mattered little in the mid-80s. So you go from stage to stage, kicking the asses of Mr. X's thugs, dragons, and midgets, with the objective of taking down Mr. X and saving Sylvia. There are 5 levels, but none of them look any different. When you get to the end after defeating a boss, you'll climb the stairs to the next stage. So it makes sense, it's all in one building, but you're not going to get much variety visually. I mean, the graphics are actually pretty good considering this is one of the console's first games, but there really isn't much in terms of level design. It's just a straight floor with no pits or hazards, other than the enemies, of course. You can perform a high punch and kick as well as both attacks while crouching, or while jumping. The punches deal more damage and award more points, but they have a shorter range. I go for the kicks about 95% of the time. I'd rather have a higher percentage shot, plus most enemies die in one hit anyway. But sometimes you're better suited with the punches if they're more effective in a boss battle, or if a hazard is lined up where your punch location is, shit like that. The controls are relatively responsive, but it may take some time getting the hang of the whole using up on the D-pad jump routine, since A and B handle the punches and kicks respectively. And you can't control your position in mid-jump. It makes for some pain-in-the-ass parts of the game where jumping is required. The soundtrack is pretty lame. It's just one song in all 5 stages, and it's pretty repetitive to begin with. But the laugh samples they use for the bosses after they defeat you is pretty impressive considering voice recordings in home console games were very rare for the time. And that's something you kind of keep going back to. For the time, this was a pretty fun game, but unfortunately it hasn't aged very well. It's certainly not unplayable, it just doesn't have a very high fun factor level. I can't really compare it to the arcade version because I don't remember playing it, but let's see how this version holds up from beginning to end. The first stage, or first floor rather, scrolls from right to left. Head that way and you'll meet the most common enemy of the game, the grippers. All they do is run at you and grab a hold of you. Some martial arts thugs these guys are. Give them kicks or punches before they get to you. They may not be much to deal with on their own, but their strength is in numbers, so just make sure you time your shots right, and keep an eye on more that will come from behind while you're dealing with the ones in front. They'll also try to sneak attack you when you approach other enemies, like this knife thrower guy for example. He stands still and throws knives one at a time in short intervals. The first attack will always be up high, so duck under it, rush him, and give him a few quick shots to take him out. If you give him too much time to chill, he'll retreat and attack low, so jump over it if this occurs. You won't meet any other new enemies until you hit the boss, the stick fighter. It's a pretty simple pattern. He'll just swing his stick and you'll be able to see it coming as he winds up. Keep your distance when he does this, and when he has it back in front of him, rush in, give him a few shots, and retreat so you don't get tagged. After about 8 hits or so, you'll take him out, and more grippers and knife throwers will come trying to bum rush you. You can stay and fight if you want, but there's really no reason to. Just head left and you'll reach the stairs to the next floor. The second floor scrolls left to right, and you'll continue this alternating pattern of going back and forth, which makes complete sense from a video game standpoint, but 0 sense from an architectural standpoint. When was the last time you went up a flight of stairs and had to walk all the way across the fucking building to get to the next floor? Oh well. Green jars will fall from the ceiling, kick them before they hit the ground, or a snake will escape and attack you. Jump over it if it gets to this situation. If you see this orange disco ball pop out and hover in midair, get the hell away from it, as it will soon explode and cascade 3 pieces of debris. Or if you have to be on screen during the explosion, stay just off center and you'll be okay, as long as there aren't other enemies nearby. Another new baddie is a dragon. He's easy as shit not to take any damage from. He'll breathe a short-range shot of fire and then disappear. You'll get points for killing him, but it doesn't take long for him to just attack and fade away. One more new enemy are the Midgets. They operate basically the same as the grippers, except they can also attack you through the air with crazy flips, so I suggest doing crouching kicks whenever they're around. Midgets and grippers make up the home stretch of the floor before you meet the boss, the boomerang fighter. He'll throw slow-moving boomerangs that will return either overhead or down below. Stay at medium range at first so you can see them coming from both sides. If he throws only one, rush in, kick the shit out of him, and walk up to floor 3. Then you get a cutscene of sorts showing Sylvia tied up to a chair screaming for Thomas to help her while Mr. X laughs in the background. This just explains the plot. Shouldn't this have come during the intro? Anyway, the stage has no new enemies, just grippers, knife throwers, and midgets. They gang up on you a little more this time, so just step up your game with your reflexes. The boss is this giant black dude. He's not much of a skilled fighter, just a big, powerful bruiser. His punches and kicks do a lot of damage, but they're slow, so your best bet is to just move in between his attacks and attack as rapidly as possible. You can take him out before he does anything. Move on ahead to the 4th floor, which needs an exterminator. It's loaded with nests that house the biggest fucking hornets I've ever seen in my life. Perform running jump kicks to the ones up top, and stop briefly to take out the lower ones. The wasps that attack you from behind won't catch up to you if you keep running, so only stop to take them out if you're stopped and surrounded. After that segment, the second half of the floor is made up of grippers and midgets, all of which attack you from behind, so you can keep moving to minimize the number of battles you have to ensue. You'll then meet up with the boss, this Hunchback Magician. He's the biggest pain in the ass of the game by far. He has several attacks. A fireball projectile that comes back as a wasp. Don't do jumping attacks, he'll catch you with this virtually every time. He'll also summon the dragons from the 2nd floor as well as the snakes. He'll unleash these when you're up close. Jump over the snakes and duck under the fire from the dragons. The only way to hurt this doughy bastard is to punch him while crouched. If you attack him up high, you can knock his head off, which does absolutely nothing to him, as his magic is too much for decapitation to get in the way. It only takes a few hits, but the tricky part is finding an opening. Wait for him to cease fire for a bit, rush in, and crouch punch the shit out of him until he dies. You get the exact same cutscene from earlier, and it's on to the 5th and final floor. The alliteration was accidental, and so was that one. Just like the 3rd stage, the only enemies here are grippers, midgets, and knife throwers. It's not even really noticeably different from that stage either, aside from dealing with 2 knife throwers at once. They'll keep their distance, so concentrate on one at a time, as if the other one isn't even there. After a little while, you'll meet the final boss, the man behind your girlfriend's kidnapping, Mr. X. Seriously, this guy's Mr. X? He looks like the squeaky-voiced teen from The Simpsons. He's a little bit tougher, though. He'll block most of your attacks and do a few kicks and punches of his own, but once you get him with a crouch kick, just keep laying into him with it and he'll topple over like nothing. You'll untie Sylvia and you'll get a congratulations, but a warning that their happiness won't continue long. Why is that? Because she gets kidnapped again and you have to rescue her all over again. What a couple of dumbasses, doomed to get kidnapped and rescued eternally. So yeah, you start the game all over again on a harder difficulty, or if you think the first game was too easy and you want to skip ahead to this one, you can select Game B from the start. And there's also a 2-player alternating mode. Kung Fu wasn't a masterpiece, certainly not this NES version, but being one of the launch titles, it at least did its part to help get the console's feet wet, and the franchise did contribute to the beat-em-up genre as a whole. It's kind of bland, but worth popping in every once in a while. And that wraps up this edition of Aqualung's Game Reviews. See you next time.